Hello and welcome to another video. Today I will be going through and ranking a bunch of different horror movies in a tier list from S tier down to F tier. Now I had trouble finding a good tier list. This one that I found has like 200 plus movies. Obviously I'm not going to go through all of them because some of them I haven't seen, some of them I have seen but legitimately just can't remember anything about them. And then there's others that aren't even proper horror movies in my opinion on the list. So I've kind of organized it into a rough kind of order with movies that I've seen up the top for me to go through. So I'm only going to go through the first few rows. These films will be ranked in terms of how well I think they are as horror films, not necessarily as films themselves. And I will be trying to keep my opinion reasonably neutral and look at things objectively rather than just how much I enjoy them. So let's get into it. The first film, The Babadook, Australian indie horror. I'm going to go C tier. I really like the comments on mental health and depression in The Babadook. It's pretty cool. The why can't you be normal? The why can't you be normal meme is hilarious with the kid. But overall, it's really not that engaging. Like it's cool once you get it, you get it. It's not overly scary, I don't think. Like the creature design of the Babadook is rather unique, and it is a unique and original idea. Like it's a type of horror movie I haven't really seen before. With that being said, it doesn't really blow me away. Next we have The Host, South Korean film, creature thriller. I'm gonna go A tier. The Host is really good. Definitely one of the weaker Korean movies that I've seen, but that's just because the bar is so incredibly high. It's an enjoyable film, but it doesn't quite blow me away like some other Korean movies do. But yeah, really cool creature design. I wouldn't say it's overly scary, but I do enjoy the aspect of it. It's like a larger scale type horror film, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, anything South Korean is pretty great. Next we have The Exorcist. Easy first S tier of the tier list. The Exorcist is probably the best horror movie ever made. I've only seen it once, but it was such a incredible experience. The only fault I have with it is I think the first 15 to 20 minutes of the director's cut is a little slow. It makes sense and I think it is worth it. But just up on a first watch of the film, I did find it like a little less engaging in the first 15 to 20 minutes. Then once you get past that, like this movie is incredible. Some of the best performances I've ever seen, one of the best stories I've ever seen. It feels so incredibly realistic. Even the scenes that aren't like your typical scary scenes, like such as when the girl's getting tested by the doctors in the hospital, like that scene is as scary as the ones with the demonic possession. So yeah, masterful, perfect ending as well. Can't fault that film. Exorcist, one of the best movies ever made, period, and definitely an S tier horror film. Next we have Silent Hill, video game adaptation. Now generally video game adaptations suck, but Silent Hill was pretty good. I think for a while it was one of the better video game adaptations. I'm gonna go high C tier. So I remember watching this when I was younger with my stepbrother and stepfather, and it was really scary then. Like as a kid, this movie was terrifying. I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and my opinion of the film dropped quite significantly upon that second rewatch. Obviously a long time in between watching it as well. My tastes have definitely matured a bit, but it's scary. The acting is good. Like it's a reasonably faithful adaptation, but it's just okay. It doesn't really go beyond just being a solid film for me. Next we have 10 Cloverfield Lane. Arguable whether it's a pure horror movie. I think it's definitely got some thriller elements, but I would probably say it's still a horror film. And 10 Cloverfield Lane is like such an awesome sequel because Cloverfield is like this found footage huge budget. Well, I don't even think it's huge budget, but lots of like VFX, big scale, kind of like monster flick. And then 10 Cloverfield Lane is the total opposite of that. Brilliant performances by everyone involved. I'm gonna go S tier. I think, oh yeah, it's kind of low S tier. I think it's Actually, no, I can't give it S tier. I have to go A tier. I just remember the ending is kind of silly. Like, it does make sense because it's a Cloverfield movie, but that's the thing. Like, this movie would honestly be served better if it wasn't a Cloverfield movie. If you removed the Cloverfield from the title and you got rid of that kind of silly ending and swapped it out with something a little cooler, it would be S tier for me because the movie is just so incredibly enjoyable. It's so tense. Like, being in that bunker, you know, you're questioning things like, is the main guy telling the truth or is he lying? And there's just so much tension and conflict between those characters, and I think the ending is a little deflating. And other than that, though, it's still a fantastic watch. Next, we have Midsommar. So for some reason, Hereditary isn't on this list, but Midsommar is, which is kind of confusing because Midsommar isn't really a horror film for me, but it does have enough horror elements for me to keep it in this tier list. I'm gonna go B tier for Midsommar. Midsommar's really unique and really enjoyable, but it's just not as good as Hereditary. For those of you who are wondering, like, if Hereditary was on the list, it would be S tier, below The Exorcist, but Midsommar's really good. I love the opening, like the suicide opening is really, really cool. There's definitely some, you know, funky stuff that goes on through the film. It's really unique. It's really creepy. It's a different type of horror, and I did enjoy that. I just don't think it was quite as excellent as, say, some of the other films. Okay, next we have Sinister. I believe that's the one with Ethan Hawke. I hope I'm not confusing that with something else, but if it is the Ethan Hawke one, a lot of people consider this to be like one of the scariest movies ever made, and I personally don't really see it. I think it's a little bit scary, but it's just okay. It's just okay. I'll go low B tier. The ending's cool. I really like the ending with the kid. Ethan Hawke does a good job as the protagonist. The aspects of, like, trying to figure out what the hell's going on is cool. I did like that aspect. It was nice and engaging, but I didn't find it overly scary personally. So low B tier for me. Next we have The Thing. Second S tier of the tier list so far. The Thing is on par with The Exorcist. In fact, I'm actually gonna put The Thing above The Exorcist. I think The Thing is the best horror movie ever made. It's perfect. It's flawless as a horror film. You have this perfect kind of setting where it's out in the middle of nowhere, and they come across this alien that can take the form of humans and could be any one of them. And that in itself is terrifying, I think. But also the small scale focus of the film works incredibly well, but then it also becomes like a narrative point about what if the Thing makes it to civilization, right? Like, they're in the middle of nowhere. If it kills all of them, doesn't really matter, right? Because the society isn't going to be, like, taken over by this thing. However, if it gets out, then there's a huge problem, right? It could take over the world. Like, the stakes are that high, and because of that, it's so perfect. Ending is perfection. All of the performances are amazing. This film has aged better than, like, so many other horror movies. Horror movies tend to age pretty bad, but the Thing, like, the practical effects still hold up to this day. Easily S tier horror movie, and one of the best horror movies ever made. Next we have The Blair Witch Project. I believe that's The Blair Witch Project. I'm gonna go... Ooh, I think I'll go high B tier for The Blair Witch Project. It's a really good movie. I love found footage movies, so maybe I'm a little biased by ranking it so highly. Like, some people might have it a bit lower, but found footage horror movies are my thing. I really enjoy them. And The Blair Witch Project is genuinely scary. Like, the found footage style just makes everything so much more immersive. The way, like, the dialogue just kind of feels supernaturalistic. I like how they kind of play it off as, like, being a real thing. Like, a lot of people kind of thought that it wasn't fiction, which is kind of funny. But yeah, Blair Witch Project, super short as well. I think it's only like 80 minutes. Super engaging throughout. Has nice tension, and yeah, it's pretty horrific, which is what you want from a horror movie. Now we have the Final Destination films. Now it's been a while since I've seen the Final Destination films, but I do have a bit of a soft spot for them. So the first one, it kind of like sets up the premise and it's pretty solid. I'm gonna go low B tier for the first Final Destination. I think objectively it's probably the best made film of all of the Final Destination movies, but it's not personally my favorite. I think the sequels definitely dial up the insanity of the concept, and it works in its favor. Like if you take these movies seriously, you're probably not going to enjoy them. However, if you go into them just hoping to be entertained and go along with the ride, like these movies are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of them. I love the concept. Final Destination 2. I'm gonna go mid B tier. I think it's personally my favorite. The car crash one. The car crash scene is probably like my favorite beginning of the Final Destination movies. It has some of the coolest deaths. I enjoyed the characters in this one a lot more than the others. Final Destination 3, probably one of the weaker ones. I'll go low C tier. I do have a soft spot for these. So the roller coaster one, the amusement park one, again pretty solid. Has some cool memorable deaths. The Tanning Salon one is an especial favorite of mine. Final Destination 4. I think it's better than 3. I'm gonna go high C tier if it'll let me. There we go. Yeah, Final Destination 4 is cool. The racetrack one, the tire death scene like really sticks in my head. Some of the deaths are super gruesome. I think this is when like they really started to dial up the insanity. So yeah, really cool. And Final Destination 5, I'm gonna put it above 3. Obviously it's been a long time since I've seen these, so these rankings of the Final Destination movies might not be entirely accurate, but 5 I remember being pretty bad, but it has such a cool ending that it's like all is forgiven. You know, it kind of links back to the first one perfectly. In terms of like deaths and entertainment and characters, it's a bit weaker than the others, but that ending like really kind of makes it fantastic. So that's that. Next we have The Ritual. I think we'll go around low B tier. The Ritual is pretty good. I enjoy the cinematography. It's beautifully shot. The concept is pretty nice. Like the setting in the woods is cool. Some of the like it's not overly engaging and not overly scary. The reveal at the end, like the monster reveal, is cool. I enjoyed that aspect. It's quite unique, and the ending in general is pretty solid. But overall, it's just a decent horror film. It's nothing beyond that for me. Next we have Cube. Cube, I'm gonna go low B tier as well. So, look, Cube isn't a good movie. Cube is pretty bad, but I love high concept stuff. Like, it's the whole idea of Cube is built around the concept, and look, its execution is a bit iffy, but the concept is cool. Like these people stuck in this cube, and it's like a puzzle, and there's these different things that they have to do to try and escape. It's pretty simple. The acting's kind of bad. The writing's pretty bad, but it's just an easy film to watch and get immersed in. So low B tier for me. 28 Days Later. I think we have another A tier movie. 28 Days Later is just super cinematic. It's for some reason 28 Weeks Later isn't on this tier list either, but if it was, it would probably be low A tier as well. I do kind of rate those films reasonably equally, although a lot of people prefer Days. Weeks is every bit as entertaining, if not more entertaining. 28 Days Later is a bit more artsy. Really great acting across the board. Like Cillian Murphy is fantastic. It's scary as well. Like some of those shots where in London where he's just walking alone, super atmospheric. The monsters are scary, lots of tension. Yeah, it's just a super well made horror movie by Danny Boyle. Next we have, I believe this is Hannibal. Hannibal, I don't remember overly, even though I have seen it somewhat recently, like probably 3 years ago. I'm gonna go B tier. I do remember. I think we'll go here, mid B tier. So I do remember like it has some super gruesome moments, and those are super cool for me because I like a lot of gore. I like shocking imagery, and Hannibal definitely delivers on that. It is a bit more of like a horror focused styled adaptation of Hannibal, and I think it works. Anthony Hopkins is really good. Obviously, same guy from Silence of the Lambs. The story's good. It's a well made movie. It just doesn't quite live up to the Silence of the Lambs, which also isn't on this tier list for some reason. Next we have The Wicker Man. So I've seen both Wicker Mans. This is the original, the 70s one. I'm gonna go mid B tier as well. I personally found this movie to be quite boring. I honestly think I prefer the Nick Cage one, even though it's pretty terrible. It's a dark comedy in my opinion, and when you look at it as a dark comedy, it's a lot better than than it is if you look at it as a horror film. But yeah, The Wicker Man, super cool concept, like a cult on an island. The ending is so incredibly memorable. It's creepy, it's engaging, but I think that it's a little dull. Like, it's not overly exciting. It kind of meanders in the middle a little bit. It's really only good because of the ending, I think. So that's that. Next we have Jaws, easy S tier. Jaws had such a big impact on society because people were scared to go to the beach after seeing Jaws. Like, when Jaws came out, people were scared of the beach. So when something like that happens, like, you've succeeded as a horror film. Like, this movie's so iconic. Spielberg absolutely killed it. You've got an iconic score. Jaws as like a villain is super cool as well, because generally, like, creatures or animals and stuff that are like the antagonist force, they can be kind of lame, but no, like, the shark is scary and it has personality as well, which just works really, really well. And yeah, Jaws is fantastic. Like, excellent story, some scary moments, and yeah, it's perfectly executed in my opinion. The best shark movie ever made. Next we have Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is pretty cool because the antagonist is blind, and that is a cool concept, because he like relies on his hearings. Like, that sense of his is amplified because he's blind. Reasonably simple story. I found it to be a bit predictable, but it was fun. It was fine. I'm gonna go low B tier for Don't Breathe. Next we have Green Room. Green Room is a film that a lot of people love. I personally just thought it was okay. It's really well made. The neo-Nazis are kind of like a cool villain, and it has that nice kind of punky vibe and a cool color palette as well. But Green Room's rather forgettable. So I think I'm going to go probably just above The Ritual for Green Room. It's decent, but it's not outstanding for me. Next we have Scream. Scream is fantastic. I'm gonna go low S tier. I think as a horror movie, like, it's everything you want. It's very self-aware as a horror movie, and it acts as almost like a parody slash satire of the genre, while also being a really good horror movie. Like, it balances that line perfectly. And yeah, like, fantastic, memorable characters. There's a reason why a franchise was built around this. Iconic characters, super cool twist as well. Like, it keeps you guessing the entire way. Really entertaining from start to finish. One of the best horror movies of all time for sure. I'm going to neglect to rank the other Scream movies just because I can't really differentiate them from memory. I do enjoy all of them though. Just, they would probably be in that B to C tier range, much like the Final Destination movies. Next we have The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, The Shining. I think everyone knows that it belongs in S tier. One of the best horror movies ever made, yet again. Stanley Kubrick, he's just such a masterful filmmaker, and his approach to horror was super cool. Jack Nicholson is just absolutely terrifying as the villain in this. It has one of my favorite opening scenes ever, like the conversation that Jack Nicholson's character is having, where he's like talking about hitting his wife or hitting his kid. Like, it just perfectly sets up the rest of the film, and I love that so much. There's so many memorable moments as well. Like, you've got the Here's Johnny and the maze sequence amazing setting as well, and I really like how they touch on supernatural themes as well, but it's nice and subtle. It's not in your face and doesn't really detract from it. So yeah, The Shining, one of the best movies ever made. Period. Next we have The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes is kind of average. I'm gonna go C tier for The Hills Have Eyes. It's entertaining. Like the concept's kind of simple, but it's cool. Like car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. There's these like people that live out there that are like cannibals, and they're deformed from, I think it's like radiation or something, and they're super scary. And the scene where that the father gets burned alive, absolutely terrifying. But beyond that, it's kind of lame. Like it's such a cool concept, I think, and like cool character designs, and a cool idea for a horror film. But I just don't think they executed it quite that well. But it is an enjoyable movie nonetheless. Next we have Alien. Alien is another S tier film. I'll probably keep it below Jaws just because of the cultural impact Jaws had, but Alien is incredible. Like the xenomorphs are terrifying. I love how different Alien and Aliens are. Like one's a horror film, one's a action movie, but Alien has so much atmosphere, and I love science fiction, so anytime you blend horror sci-fi, like that's a real tick for me. And I think Alien has done it better than most films. Like In the Thing, perfect examples of sci-fi horror. The chest burst scene is still like one of the most memorable scenes in a horror movie ever. It's absolutely terrifying. Sigourney Weaver as Ripley is so good. One of the best female protagonists in any film ever, I think. Like just super well done. Yeah, such a great film. Next we have Saw. I love Saw so much. I'm gonna go S tier for Saw. Why not? A little biased as an Australian, but Saw is really good. I recently watched all of the Saw movies. I'm not going to rank all of the ones that are here because some are missing, but the first Saw is just so good. Like it's just got such a simple premise, and they milk it for everything it's worth. And I love these kinds of like situations where characters are in and you think like, oh, what would you do in that situation? And Saw is the epitome of that, and the twist is absolutely iconic. One of the best movies, and honestly one of the best horror movie franchises of all time. Yeah, I'm going to neglect to rank the other Saw films. Saw 2 is fantastic. I honestly kind of get the other ones in the middle mixed up a little bit, but I do enjoy all of these Saw movies for sure. Next we have Lights Out. Lights Out is pretty good. I'm gonna go high B tier for Lights Out. I watched this on Halloween a couple of years ago, and yeah, it was entertaining. It's not anything that's going to blow you away, but it's an enjoyable experience that is quite scary, and I really like the mental illness kind of themes that it touches on as well, so definitely worth a watch. Next we have The Descent. The Descent is an A tier horror movie for me. Probably one of the scariest movies on this tier list so far. I personally don't really get scared watching horror movies that much. I did when I was younger, but not so much anymore. But I think The Descent is one of those movies that like even people who don't get scared will feel something when watching The Descent. Like it is pretty terrifying. I love the fake out ending that it has. I like how the film takes its time in the beginning before like revealing like what the antagonist force is. The setting of being like deep in caves as well is terrifying within itself. Like I think people who are like claustrophobic would be scared enough just by that premise, let alone the other shenanigans that happen. So yeah, The Descent is incredible. Next we have The Mist. The Mist is, yeah, I'm gonna go high A tier. Maybe behind 10 Cloverfield Lane. The Mist is kind of like the opposite of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like the film itself is just kind of okay. It's probably like a B tier film within itself. But I remember watching this in my final year of uni, and I was kind of like going along with the ride. Like it's pretty simple horror, like right, doesn't do anything too crazy, bit generic. And then I had this idea. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be a cool idea if it like ended like this? And then that turned out to be the exact ending of the film, and the way they executed it was like absolutely flawlessly. It's probably one of the best twist endings in the horror genre, like of all time. It's so perfect, and just from that alone elevates it to A tier. Like if you have a good ending, it sells the film for me. Next we have Silence of the Lambs. I think I said earlier that it wasn't on the tier list. Well, it actually is, so my mistake. It's good to see Silence of the Lambs here. It's another S tier horror movie for me. Anthony Hopkins is terrifying as Hannibal Lecter. He's really, really good. The story as well, like I like how he's more of a side character. Like he's not the proper villain here. Definitely has his moments, but terrifying ending. I forget the name, but like the main antagonist, the guy that like dresses up in woman's clothes, like he's super terrifying as well. And yeah, just a super iconic and well made horror movie, definitely S tier. Next we have The Ring. The Ring is pretty good. I'm gonna go like high B tier for The Ring. I think it's well made. I definitely like the kind of mother child concept in horror. It's scary. Definitely has some really cool moments. But yeah, it doesn't stand out to me as much as like some other horror movies. But the concept is kind of cool, and yeah, like the child, the evil female child, definitely super scary. The Fly is another S tier movie for me. I'm gonna put it just after Scream. The Fly is one of the best horror movies ever made. I love body horror, like seeing someone's like degrade both physically and mentally is fantastic. I think it's a Cronenberg film, pretty sure. I did a video on this in uni actually, and yeah, The Fly is so good. Jeff Goldblum, definitely his best performance of all time, and yeah, really simple concept, right? Like a scientist builds this teleportation device, and a fly gets stuck in there, and then he starts becoming more and more like a fly. Really simple, but honestly, like one of the scariest movies on this list, simply because I think it's way more horrifying to see like a character you care about slowly like transform in a way that's really tragic. That to me is scarier than say a movie with just some like generic jump scares with like a killer or something. Yeah, The Thing, super well made, great story, and easy S tier for me. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. Next we have Halloween. Now this is going to be a hot take, but I'm going to go high C tier for Halloween. One of the most iconic movies ever made. Kind of invented the slasher genre, I guess, or at least popularized it. I don't like Halloween. I think it's kind of lame. I haven't seen it in quite some time, so maybe if I revisit it, I'll have a different opinion now that I'm a bit older. But I remember watching it, and like I wasn't scared at all. I wasn't overly engaged with the story, and I didn't like the characters all that much. So obviously very important for setting up a lot of like the horror tropes, but I think this film's quite overrated in my opinion. So I'm gonna be quite controversial and put it in C tier. Next we have Piranha 3D. I'm gonna go D tier. Look, Piranha honestly isn't too bad. It's an enjoyable movie. Like it's got piranhas, it's got gory deaths, it's got topless women. So it has some memorable moments. Like I like the ending a lot. The death scene with like the chainsaw guy is super cool, but it's a pretty bad film in my opinion. But it is entertaining, so you know, you kind of it's kind of like the Final Destination films, but without that cool kind of gimmick. Next we have Poltergeist, another D tier film for me. Definitely better than Piranha, but I really disliked this movie. I found it to be one of the least engaging horror movies on the list. Like generally, the strength of horror movies are that they are very immersive and very engaging, and this one just didn't do it for me. Like it wasn't scary. There were no cool characters to latch onto. I didn't like the story. Yeah, definitely a skippable film for me. Next, we have The Conjuring. The Conjuring, the first one's really good. I'm gonna go low A tier. Definitely one of the more scary films on this list. I think a lot of people, when they're asked like what is the scariest movie ever made, a lot of people say The Conjuring. I personally didn't find it that scary, but I did watch it like this year. It's one of the most recent films on this list that I've seen, and yeah, it's just a well made film. It's solid. I like the characters. The concept is pretty cool. I like how it ties it in with like a true story and true characters. So that aspect of it is really cool. And yeah, it's just super well made. It's an effective horror film for me. The Conjuring 2 is less good. I'm gonna put it in high B tier, I guess. It's fine. I definitely enjoyed the first one more. Like the change in setting is cool to the UK, but I think it's just less scary than the first one. Has some cool moments, but it's a little bit like the typical sequel. It's a little bit over the top, and I think I would have preferred it if it was a tiny bit more grounded. Okay, next we have Hush. Hush is super cool because the protagonist is deaf, so that is the gimmick of Hush, and for that reason, I'm gonna go high B tier. It's actually a really well made film. Like the protagonist is super likable, even though she's like a deaf character. She's someone that we root for pretty early on, and I really like that kind of element where there's just a guy trying to break into a house. It's really nice and simple. It's well told. It's well executed. It doesn't blow you away, but the villain's cool. The protagonist is cool. The concept is cool, and it's well made. It kind of ticks all of those boxes. Next, we have Bone Tomahawk. Bone Tomahawk is a A-tier horror movie for me. Yeah, it's got problems. It's definitely not like A-tier quality, but it is a horror western. Look at this list and point out the other horror westerns on this list. There are none, right? It is a unique concept. There should be more horror movies set in historical periods, and westerns in particular, like it really works here. The kind of cannibalism attacking like this small town, really really cool. The characters are super great. Kurt Russell is fantastic. Jack Shepherd from Lost makes an appearance, which is cool. Has one of the most horrific scenes out of any film on this list, involving torture in a cave, and yeah, super gory, super memorable. Definitely a good time. I highly recommend checking it out as long as you're not squeamish. Next we have The Witch. The Witch is gonna go. I'll go high A tier. I think 10 Cloverfield Lane is probably better, but the Witch is fantastic. Like such a good film. The kind of like old English, almost Shakespearean style dialogue is a bit jarring to me. It's been a problem of like this director's films for me in general, but once you kind of like get into it, like the first 30 minutes, it's really really solid from then on. I think it starts a bit slow, but if you're patient and you stick with it, the last hour or so, it just gets continually better. The ending is incredible. The scene with the goat is super super good. All of the performances are S tier. Like, there's a reason why I forget her name, but the actress who's in this, her career really blossomed from this performance, and you can see why. Like, she's a fantastic actress, and yeah, The Witch is super great. Next we have Train to Busan. Train to Busan is an S tier horror movie for me. Yeah, everything I want in a zombie film. Like, it's got high octane action. It's got zombies that are threatening. They run fast. They sprint. It's not like The Walking Dead where they walk super slow and characters only are in danger when the plot needs them to be in danger. Like, no. These characters are in danger at all times because these fucking zombies sprint, right? South Korean film, again, love South Korean movies. I think this is better than The Host. It's a bit more mainstream and definitely like appeals to people who just want something that's easy to watch. But what I really appreciated about it is it gave me the kind of action that I want to see in like a mainstream zombie film, but it gave me a story that is equally excellent. Like, it's an extremely emotional ending, and I really like the character arcs that happen in this one. So lovable side characters as well. So S tier for me. Train to Busan, really really good. Next we have Creep. Creep is a found footage horror film. I forget the names, like Mark Duplass and I forget the name of the other guy, but basically these two buddies who I think went to film school together decided to make this found footage horror movie. I don't even believe there's like a screenplay for it. I think they just pretty much improvised everything, and yeah, it's incredible. I'm gonna go just after 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like, Creep is one of my favorite horror movies ever. I love found footage, as I've mentioned a few times already, and I think this is probably my favorite example of found footage horror. Super simple. I just love the naturalistic dialogue. Like, it feels super realistic, and the found footage style cinematography just works really well, and the ending is fantastic. The acting is fantastic. There's so much to like about this film. I highly recommend checking it out. Creep 2 isn't as good as the first one, but it is still pretty solid. Like, it's got that Mark Duplass playing the same guy. I'll go just after Midsummer. I think it's definitely worth watching if you enjoyed the first one. I think the concept of the first one is just a little stronger for me. But yeah, Creep 2 is just kind of like more of the same. So if you enjoy the first one, you will enjoy it. Next we have Get Out. I'm gonna go high A tier for Get Out. I think I may be being a bit too generous with my S tiers. Generally, I like to be pretty harsh with them, but remember, these aren't necessarily like rankings for the films overall, but how I rank them as horror movies. So, and Get Out is really really good. Gets a lot out of its budget. Super cool themes, like the racial themes are really impressive. Excellent performances by all of the cast. Yeah, it's pretty close to S tier, to be honest. I think I need to rewatch this one because I haven't seen it in quite a while. I remember really enjoying it, watching it the first time, but there were some issues that I had with it that I can't quite remember right now. But yeah, super creepy, and yeah, excellent horror film. Next we have Us. Another Jordan Peele film. I'm gonna go C tier for Us. I was pretty disappointed with Us. Like, the concept's kind of cool, but I just didn't enjoy it. Like, I didn't find it funny. I didn't really like the story, if I was being honest, and it feels like a huge downgrade from Get Out. So yeah, like, I know a lot of people do really like this film, and it's certainly creepy, but for me personally, I was pretty disappointed in it. Next we have Insidious. Insidious is another C tier film for me. I'm not a huge fan of supernatural elements, but there are some exceptions. Like, for example, The Shining and The Exorcist, they both have supernatural elements, and they're both in S tier. But Insidious, like, the concept's kind of cool, and a lot of people rate this as one of the scariest movies ever made, but I personally didn't enjoy it. I didn't really find it that engaging. The characters were probably decent, like better than most horror films, but yeah, I wasn't overly engaged in this one, and didn't find it all that scary. Next we have The Evil Dead. Now this is where we get to some really, really hot takes. If it was me personally, I would put The Evil Dead in D tier, but I'm going to go mid C tier for the sake of how much it's loved as a film. So yeah, I think the Evil Dead movies kind of suck. I'm gonna put them together. I think the second one's definitely better, so I might go here for the second one. But Both of them, I don't enjoy them. I don't know why they're so beloved. Maybe I need to watch like someone who's a massive fan of them, like watch a video of theirs so they can explain it to me. But I don't get it. They're not scary. They're not funny. The gore is like over the top and kind of fakeish, I guess. I'm not a big fan of the Evil Dead universe. I don't know. I don't understand why these films are so loved, if I'm being honest. Like, these are two of the most beloved and critically acclaimed horror movies, and a lot of people would probably have them S or A tier. But for me, I think they're pretty trash, so I'm gonna say C tier for them. Next, we have The Birds by Hitchcock. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go like mid B tier. I know a lot of like film purists would put this higher, but honestly, it hasn't aged very well. Obviously, there's only so much you can do at the time of this film was made. Like, there's no CGI, and look, Hitchcock does his best with the limitations of his time, and it is a scary movie. Like, birds in general aren't really something that's scary, but he makes them scary. So I think that in itself is an accomplishment. But I kind of found the characters to be a bit dull, and I think this film has aged poorly compared to some of Hitchcock's other films. Next, we have Hereditary. I lied and said it wasn't on the tier list. Well, it actually is, and Hereditary is S tier for me. I'm gonna put it above Jaws. Yeah, probably one of the scariest movies on this list. It's a different type of horror though. Like, it's more of just like a building level of horror that never leaves you, rather than like specific sequences being scary. I personally found like the big twist at the end of Act 1, or in the middle of the film roughly, like, it's one of the most horrific scenes like ever. So super creepy, and then the plot that unfolds from beyond that point is insane. The performances are absolutely incredible. Like, some of the best acting I've ever seen in horror films. Can't believe it didn't do well at the Academy Awards. Well, I can believe it, because generally horror films kind of get ignored, but yeah, insane. One of the best horror movies of all time, for sure. Next, we have It. It is terrible. D tier. I know a lot of people love this movie, and I understand why. It's very mainstream friendly, so I can see why general audiences do gravitate towards it. And clowns are kinda, scary, right? Well, people tend to think so. When the It clown is kind of scary. I haven't seen the original, but I think as a remake, it does a decent job of at least like not trying to be too childish. But yeah, aside from the opening sequence, like, there's nothing really cool about this film. I don't really enjoy the kid characters, and I don't find the clown to be that scary. Next, we have The Cabin in the Woods. Bit of a tricky one to rate. I'm gonna go mid B tier. A lot of people would have this as like an S or A tier film, because it's like a very meta horror movie that's super self-aware. It's enjoyable. It's almost like a horror comedy, but I personally just wasn't overly enthralled with this one. I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. A lot of people really hyped this movie up, and it is good, and I can see why. I do like that kind of commentary on horror films, but it, as a like an enjoyable experience, it's just decent, right? So B tier for me. Next, we have The Platform, a foreign film. I forget what country it's from. I think it's maybe Spanish, but honestly can't remember. The Platform's pretty solid. I'm gonna go low A tier for The Platform. Again, simple premise. It's kind of like Cube. I like these types of films, so they do get like elevated a little bit on the tier list. It's a unique concept that we haven't really seen done before. It's pretty simple, and it's engaging. Like, that's the main thing. Like, from start to finish, you are engaged. And in terms of like story and character, it might not be as strong, and it's not really like a scary horror film. Like I probably wouldn't classify it as a horror film. It's a bit tricky to kind of throw into a particular genre, but as a film itself, it's quite enjoyable. So, low A tier for me. Next we have Gerald's Game, or Gerard's Game. I'm pretty sure it's Gerald's Game. Yeah, I think mid B tier is roughly where it belongs. It's pretty engaging. I like the concept a lot, and they do a lot with very little. Like, it's pretty much all set in one location, and they really get a lot out of it. But it's just kind of boring. It's not scary, and it probably could have been like 15 minutes shorter. I do like the kind of like twist, and some care was taken into the story for this one, but overall, like, it's just okay. And for the final film of this tier list, we have Split. So Split's kind of cool because it's a sequel to Unbreakable, and James McAvoy really carries it here by playing like a character with a bunch of different personalities. That's kind of the whole gimmick of the film. I'm gonna go high B tier. It's a really entertaining movie to watch. I just don't think it's overly great. Like, James McAvoy carries by doing all of these like different kinds of personalities, but even then it kind of like wears on you a little bit, and towards the end of the film you kind of get over it a bit. And outside of that, which is, to be fair, the main aspect of the film, there isn't really a ton going on here that's overly engaging or unique. But it is a cool kind of concept, and it's cool to see M. Night Shyamalan kind of regain some of his earlier form in this one. It's probably the only good movie he's made post 2010, I think. So yeah, for an M. Night film, it's honestly pretty good. But yeah, so that's my tier list. I've decided not to rank some of these. Like, Antichrist isn't a horror film in my opinion. Mandy is Mandy is Mandy. The Lighthouse I wouldn't really say is a horror film either. Shaun of the Dead, like, it's a comedy. Doctor Sleep probably is a horror film, but yeah, actually I might rate this one just finally. I'll go like high C tier. It was honestly pretty disappointing. It has its moments, but like, it's a sequel to The Shining, when if you're gonna do that, you really have to live up to that benchmark, and it absolutely didn't. But it has some cool moments for sure. But yeah, like, the rest of the films I've either like I've seen and don't remember, or can't really differentiate them in the case of like the Scream sequels, or like I don't consider them to be horror movies. Like, Shutter Island is a fantastic movie, but I don't think it's a horror film. I think it's more of a thriller. So that's my tier list for horror movies. Obviously there's quite a few good horror movies still missing from this list. Like, there are, as you can see, there's a lot of different horror movies here, but most of them are kind of the more average ones. But yeah, this is my tier list, and let me know what your tier list is below. Like, what are your favorite horror movies? What are some of your hot takes? Do you have any hot takes like mine with The Evil Dead? Please let me know in the comment section below. This is For The Record. Thank you for watching.